Cristiano Ronaldo spent more than 20 years chasing one dream. He achieved almost everything football could offer, except the one thing he wanted most. And strangely, that's exactly why his story matters. Long before Cristiano Ronaldo became one of the greatest football players in history, he became something even more powerful. A symbol, not of talent, not of luck, but of the belief that determination can change your destiny. We grow up hearing the same message in different forms. Work harder. Never give up. Keep going. Success belongs to those who refuse to quit. At first, these sound like simple words of encouragement. But over time, they become something much deeper. They become the invisible rules we use to understand life. If I put in enough effort, I will get the result I deserve. If I stay disciplined, I will eventually be rewarded. If I sacrifice more than everyone else, one day it will all make sense. Perhaps that's why so many people saw themselves in Ronaldo. He wasn't the most naturally gifted child. He wasn't supposed to become the player he eventually became. Everything about his career seemed to be built on relentless discipline rather than destiny. While others celebrated success, he was already preparing for the next challenge. While others accepted their limits, he treated every limit as something temporary. For years, that mindset worked. Every setback became another comeback. People laughed at the way he celebrated. They criticized his confidence. They called him obsessed. But obsession was exactly what carried him further than almost anyone else. For years, the world watched him turn doubt into fuel, which is why so many of us quietly believed. If anyone could overcome every obstacle, it would be Cristiano Ronaldo. Every doubt became another record. Every impossible goal slowly turned into reality. Without realizing it, millions of us started believing the same equation. Effort equals reward. Persistence equals victory. Discipline guarantees success. It's a comforting idea because it gives us control. It tells us that our future is entirely in our own hands. And in many ways, that belief is beautiful. It pushes people to study when they're exhausted, to build businesses after countless failures, to raise children with patience even when no one notices, to keep showing up when quitting would be easier. Without that belief, many of the greatest achievements in human history would never have happened. But there is another truth that we don't talk about often. Life is not a mathematical equation. It doesn't always return what we invest. Sometimes two people work equally hard, yet only one reaches the destination. Sometimes the kindest people lose the ones they love. Sometimes extraordinary effort ends in ordinary disappointment. Not because the effort wasn't enough, but because life has variables that effort can never control. And perhaps that is the most uncomfortable lesson for people who have always believed that hard work can solve everything. Because the moment that belief begins to crack, we are forced to ask a question that no one prepared us for. If I did everything I could, why didn't I get the ending I dreamed of? Perhaps that's why every World Cup felt different. Because it never felt like watching an ordinary player. It felt like watching someone who had spent his entire life proving that impossible things could be done. And every 4 years, the world waited to see if he could do it one more time. Every 4 years, the world seems to stop for a month. Flags appear on balconies. Families gather around televisions. Children dream. Legends are born. And for Cristiano Ronaldo, every World Cup meant something slightly different. The first one was about a rival. A young player with extraordinary talent stepping onto football's biggest stage, believing there would be many more opportunities ahead. There were. Another World Cup. Then another. And another. Each one carrying the same quiet promise. Maybe this is the one. That is the strange thing about hope. It never arrives all at once. It returns in small, stubborn pieces. Every 4 years, it whispers the same sentence. Try again. For more than 2 decades, Ronaldo did exactly that. He carried the expectations of an entire nation. He carried the weight of comparisons. He carried the pressure of knowing that every tournament might be remembered forever. Sometimes Portugal looked unstoppable. Sometimes they fell apart. Sometimes football simply reminded everyone how cruel it can be. 90 minutes. One mistake. One injury. One missed chance. One extraordinary performance from an opponent, Years of preparation can disappear in a single evening. That is the beauty of sport. And also its cruelty. People often look at champions and see only the trophies. They rarely think about the countless dreams that ended just one step before history. Because for every team lifting the World Cup, dozens of others leave believing they could have been the one. Cristiano Ronaldo wasn't chasing just another trophy. He had already won almost everything football could offer. League titles, Champions League trophies, individual awards, international success, records that may never be broken. If his career had ended without any of those achievements, perhaps the pain would have been easier to explain. But that wasn't the case. The pain came from something much more human. It came from the one dream that remained unfinished. And maybe that's why his story resonates so deeply. Because almost all of us know what it feels like to keep believing that there is still one more chance. One more interview. One more conversation. One more opportunity to fix what once went wrong. We tell ourselves that next year will be different. That next time we'll be wiser, stronger, more prepared. Sometimes we are. Sometimes life simply chooses another ending. When Portugal's final World Cup journey came to an end, many people saw tears. Some saw disappointment. Others saw the end of an extraordinary career. But perhaps what we were really witnessing was something far more universal. A man standing face to face with the quiet realization that there would be no next time, no extra 4 years, no final chance to rewrite the story. Only the life he had already lived, and the choice every human being must eventually make. To keep grieving the ending they never received, or to begin making peace with it. We often think the hardest part of losing is the loss itself. It isn't. The hardest part is what disappears with it. When a dream finally comes to an end, we don't just lose an outcome. We lose a future. Without realizing it, all of us spend years building invisible versions of tomorrow. We picture the life we'll have, the person we'll become, the conversations we'll one day look back on with pride. Those imagined futures slowly become part of our identity. So, when reality takes a different path, it doesn't just change our plans. It changes our sense of who we are. Perhaps that's why acceptance feels so painful. Not because he was perfect, but because he never stopped believing, even when the world had already begun preparing his farewell. Because accepting reality often means saying goodbye to a version of yourself that never had the chance to exist. Maybe you imagined becoming the founder of a company that would change your family's future. Maybe you thought the relationship you fought so hard to protect would last forever. Maybe you believed there would always be enough time to tell someone how much they meant to you. Maybe you were certain your parents would still be there when life finally became less busy. Then one day, life quietly closed a door. Not because you didn't care, not because you didn't try, simply because time kept moving. And suddenly you weren't grieving only what happened. You were grieving everything that could have happened. That kind of grief is difficult to explain. There are no ceremonies for it, no flowers, no condolences. People see you going to work, laughing with friends, paying your bills, living what appears to be a normal life. But deep inside, you are mourning a future that no one else even knew existed. Psychologists sometimes describe this as grieving the unlived life. Not the life you lost, the life you imagined, the child you never had, the career you almost started, the city you never moved to, the apology that never came, the friendship that slowly disappeared without a final conversation. These losses don't leave visible scars, yet they shape us in ways that success rarely does. Perhaps that is why Ronaldo's story resonates so deeply, because very few people know what it feels like to score hundreds of goals. But almost everyone knows what it feels like to quietly carry one unfinished dream for years, a dream that slowly becomes part of your identity, until one day, you realize it is time to stop waiting for the ending you once believed was inevitable. And maybe that moment is where real adulthood begins. Not when life finally gives you everything you wanted, but when you find the courage to stop asking life to become the story you had written in your mind. And instead, you begin learning how to love the story that is already unfolding in front of you. There is something we rarely talk about. Many people spend years fighting battles that ended long ago, not because they still have a chance to change the outcome, but because they cannot accept that the outcome has already been decided. We tell ourselves we're being strong, that we're refusing to give up, that one more attempt might change everything. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes, persistence changes history. But sometimes, persistence quietly becomes resistance. Resistance against reality. And reality always wins. This is where many people misunderstand acceptance. They think acceptance means lowering your standards, settling, losing ambition, admitting defeat. But real acceptance has nothing to do with any of those things. Acceptance is not saying, I don't care anymore. It is saying, I care deeply, but I can no longer build my life around something I cannot control. That is a very different sentence. Imagine standing in the ocean, trying to stop the tide with your hands. You could spend every ounce of your strength fighting the waves, or you could finally admit that the ocean was never your enemy. It was simply following its nature. Life is often the same. Seasons never ask for permission before they change. One day your parents stop walking as fast. Your children stop asking to be carried. The mirror quietly begins telling a different story. Friends you once saw every weekend slowly become people you only text on birthdays. And somehow, you never notice the exact day it all began. Life doesn't announce its biggest changes. It simply keeps moving. No amount of determination can negotiate with time. No amount of discipline can stop the people we love from growing older. No amount of ambition can freeze a single moment forever. And, strangely, the moment we stop trying to control those realities, we discover how much energy we've been spending fighting battles that were never ours to win. Energy that could have been spent loving the people still beside us, creating something meaningful, laughing without guilt, being fully present, instead of endlessly comparing reality with a life that no longer exists. Perhaps this is what makes acceptance one of the bravest things a person can do, because it asks you to release a dream without releasing yourself, to let go of an ending without letting go of hope. Not hope that the past will somehow return, but hope that life can still surprise you in ways you never planned. Cristiano Ronaldo may never lift the World Cup. Nothing will change that. But imagine if he spent the rest of his life defined only by the trophy he never won. Imagine if every achievement, every record, every unforgettable moment became meaningless simply because one dream remained unfinished. We would immediately see how unfair that would be. Yet, many of us do exactly that to ourselves. We reduce an entire life to the one thing we didn't achieve. We ignore the people we became, the lessons we learned, the lives we touched, the quiet victories that no one applauded, all because we cannot stop staring at the empty pitch, waiting for a trophy we believed would one day be ours. Maybe acceptance isn't about pretending that empty pitch doesn't matter. Maybe it's about realizing a single empty space was never meant to define the whole room. Can I ask you something? What's your World Cup? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Or simply leave a ball if you're listening on a screen. Maybe tonight, before you go to sleep, think about your own World Cup, the dream you've carried for years, the version of yourself you've been waiting to become. And ask yourself one quiet question. If that dream never comes true, would your life still be worth loving? Because the answer to that question may have been the lesson Cristiano Ronaldo spent an entire lifetime teaching us. If conversations like this help you see life a little more clearly, I'd love to have you here for the next one, because there are still many ideas worth exploring together. Until next time, keep growing, quietly,